over time. But we do have a couple more speakers that are going to be amazing. And I think that actually what Melissa and Trevor were just saying flows really perfectly into our next speaker, Grant Wilson, who is an expert in Earth Law and the executive director of Earth Law Center. And the sort of fundamental argument around this is that natural systems and non-human living beings have inherent rights that need to be protected. So he can tell us all about that, but I think it goes just to what Melissa and Trevor were just speaking about. So thanks, Grant, for staying late, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. There's actually a really strong, thriving rights of nature movement in South Asia, including in India. And there's a court case on the rights of the animal kingdom in the state of Uttarakhand. And I might ask some of my friends there, should snakes have rights, and do they have rights in any parts of India? And I think some would say yes. There's also a history of special legal protections for deities there. And so that was really interesting to hear about snakes and the culture in India, where I just was about a month ago. Oh yeah, I'm going to share my screen here. All right, like every good presentation, I started off by asking, can you see my screen?
Perfect.
Okay, we good. Okay, good. Well, thank you for having me here today. I'm going to talk to you about a couple main things, and one of them is about the philosophy of our legal system, and I promise you it won't get too technical or dry. But I challenge you to imagine, what if the philosophy that underlies our legal system was based on our connection to the planet and the well-being of this larger community of life, of which we are one part? And as we'll hear about, that's starting to emerge as a reality across the world. Okay, a little about me. This is me as a kid on the right-hand side with a sign that says "Save the ocean for the fish." And the important part here is for the fish. Little did I know it, but I was already practicing ecocentrism, meaning that we're doing things, passing new laws, doing conservation work, not for the human utility from nature, not because it's economically beneficial to protect or save the fish, but because they have an intrinsic to exist, they have intrinsic worth, and we should protect them for their own sake. So there I was as a young lad practicing ecocentrism, which now become my career as a lawyer. If you've never seen a fish before and don't know what they look like, I just wanted to zoom up on my sign. That's what a fish looks like right there. Okay, so protect the ocean for the fish. Then I, as a young conservationist, became really interested in wolf protection. My first kind of conservation environmental internship was with this great group called Conservation Northwest. And about a couple of weeks before I stepped into the office for the first time, wolves had just returned to Washington State, where I grew up, for the first time in 80 years. They'd been hunted to death, bounties were put on their head, they were extirpated. And, like magic, you find out nature can restore itself if you give it a chance. And this really sparked my imagination and excited me about the possibility that I could do a lot of good for the planet and we could restore it. Trigger warning for wildlife in the next photo. Just within 6 months of when wolves came back to Washington State for the first time in 80 years, someone showed up at the post office with a box. It was dripping blood. They opened it, of course, and one of these wolves that had just come back had been poached. So I kind of went from this mindset of, wow, like sparking my imagination, we can do this, to, wait a minute, why is there this mentality of us versus them, humans versus nature? Why are people upset about ecosystems restoring themselves? And I really wanted to look at some of the legal reasons for this. For example, I learned that endangered species laws don't always protect species until they're almost extinct. Wolf species populations don't have protection, where it's on again, off again. And really wanted to be part of a solution to this problem. And challenge us versus them from a legal perspective. And so, I did the unthinkable for me. If you knew me at the time, I had a rat tail. I did the unthinkable for someone with a rat tail and went to law school to become a lawyer. And I quickly got involved in environmental protections internationally, including for small island nations, started going to the climate change conferences. This is the one in Mexico. And from those experiences, learned that, it's not only nature that's facing an existential threat, it's people, it's entire nations. And really got interested in, systemic solutions to some of our environmental problems to address the world's biggest threats to human nature. And that's when I finished law school and became what I call an earth lawyer. Now, let me tell you a little bit about earth law as a field. Earth law is a field of study that incorporates a variety of legal movements that, if implemented, could solve some of the biggest environmental challenges. And these include the rights of nature, which I mentioned at the start, the idea that nature does or should have rights, just as humans do. It includes the rights of future generations, giving a voice to those who will bear the brunt of environmental damage to the planet. It includes ecocide, the criminalization of the destruction of nature, which is a campaign growing across the world. It includes deconstructing our legal system to move beyond this notion of who has rights and who doesn't, which really was created to protect the rights of white landowners at first, and has slowly been expanded to include other people, and we're still working on that. What if we look beyond the idea of rights and instead had systems based on reciprocity relationships, and then you're getting into indigenous customary laws and understandings. So that that's early, and that's what I do. And but before we go too deep into it, I want to introduce this concept of earth jurisprudence. This is Thomas Berry. Thomas Berry was a self-described theologian who wrote about something called earth jurisprudence. I remember going to my first law school party, and I was nervous because I had imposter syndrome. And the first person at the party came up to me and said, "Hey, Grant, I think jurisprudence sucks." And I panicked, and I go, "What is jurisprudence?" I'd never heard of it, and I felt like my law school reputation was on the line. And so, of course, I was like, "Yeah, jurisprudence sucks. I agree with you." But had I had more confidence in myself, I would have asked, "What is jurisprudence?" And it means is the philosophy of law. So at the top of the conversation, I said, what is the philosophy of our legal system? And Thomas Berry and many others understand that our legal system is really based on these ideas of separation from nature. Humans and nature are different. Think about the wolves, us versus them. Our legal system is based on property ownership. I own nature. It's mine. It's my resource. I can do with it like whatever I please. Our legal system is based on human superiority to nature, which is unfortunate. But Thomas Berry and many others said, what if our legal system was based on the idea that humans are one part of a larger Earth community, along with all other life on our planet and really the universe? What if our legal system was based on reciprocity and generation? And this was Earth jurisprudence. Again, jurisprudence, the philosophy of law, and earth law is the practice of earth jurisprudence. So what does this look like in the courts, in the legal system? And of course, many of these ideas, reciprocity, regeneration, guardian nature, long been recognized by many indigenous customs and beliefs. So just to put it out on paper, Earth Law. This is a book we wrote on Earth Law that's being taught in law schools and other programs throughout the world. It's going to be taught in Japan next year. It's going to be taught in India. It's taught in the US in a variety of schools and includes some of these movements. And the picture of the courtroom, I think, encapsulates what we're going for here. And I should say that it's very different from environmental law. Environmental law is great. It's the Interspecies Act and other endangered species protection laws worldwide have prevented many extinctions. But kind of, the big problem with environmental laws is, they do too little, too late. They play defense. They slow down degradation, slow down extinction, but never reverse it. And, Earth law is all about reversing that trend. So, in the US, I bet a lot of you are, we're doing better. The rivers aren't on fire anymore. The Great Salt Lake is still collapsing in one of the great ecocides in the country. And many of the environmental harms that used to happen here just happen elsewhere. So there's a lot of work to be done, and that's a lot of what we do. Just to show you our team, because I think they're great and they're worth checking out. Here's our team, and Earth Law Center champions Earth-centered laws and community movements that protect all life on the planet. Law. Okay, that's part one. I don't like talking about myself, so now I want to talk about other people who I think are really great. And the kind of theme here, the theme in that first part was about what's the philosophy of the system and how can we change it. I'll talk about that in this section as well, but also I just want to highlight people who are working to really give a voice to nature. And I say that in kind of a legal sense. If nature has rights, it can assert those rights in, a court and a legislative body, in administrative law. And how does it do that? People can serve as guardians of those ecosystems. And in cases around the world, some people are doing that, legally speaking. Other people are doing it as a career path. And I'm going to highlight those while just talking about some case studies of these movements worldwide. So Ecuador is one of 4 countries in the world to say nature has rights at the national level, and Ecuador is in its constitution. That was in 2008. And there's actually hundreds of rights of nature laws, regulations, provisions, declarations across the world now in dozens of countries. I wanted to highlight Natalia Green. She runs the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, which is building a global rights of nature movement, which believes that all these systems have inherent rights, just like humans do, just like corporations do in many countries. And she's bringing a voice to nature and the rights of nature on the international level. So Ecuador says nature has rights, and that's been applied in practice in a series of landmark cases. One of those was to protect the rights of mangroves. What rights do mangroves have? Well, the courts basically said it has a right to be free from pollution that's into their ecosystem from monocultures and that are harming the mangroves. So rights of nature is being enforced in the courts in Ecuador, which I think is really cool. And these are, 3 other people working to give nature a voice in the courts. They're all involved in the mangroves case. 2 are still with Earth Law Center, and Carla Cardenas in the middle is doing other great things. And they're in the courts submitting briefs on behalf of ecosystems, basically serving as their guardians or stewards in the court, defending their rights. The Nez Perce tribe in the United States has recognized the rights of the Snake River. Here it is there. They're in the Northwest. And these are 2 amazing nature guardians, Elliot Moffat and Julian Matthews, who are giving a voice to nature, to rivers, and moving towards guardianship of rivers in the Pacific Northwest, so they can be part of the legal system, so they can defend their own rights and interests. Last year, Panama passed a national law that says nature has rights. Earth Law Center worked on this with the Leatherback Project and others. And it also has all these cool ecocentric law principles. So when a judge is about to make a decision and doesn't know, do I protect the ecosystem or not? Maybe there's some rights, interrelated rights, and people have different angles on it. There's a principle, in dubio pro natura, when in doubt, protect nature. This part of Panama's national law now, which I think is really great. And this is a 26-year-old, he was at the time, lawmaker, Juan Diego Vasquez Gutierrez, who ushered in the rights of nature in their national, through their national legislative body in Panama. There's young people out there who are fighting for systematic change to our legal system, 26 years old. I think that's just such a cool thing. And he worked a lot with Callie Wielenturf, who's around the same age and has a project to protect leatherback turtles. And helped with this law as well. And she even has since then worked on a national law that's also passed in Panama just last month that protects sea turtle populations and includes a defense of their rights based on the national rights of nature law there. So sea turtles have specific rights laid out in a law in Panama. Be sure to check that out. Ocean rights. There are people out there like Cabo Verde was featured at this conference who believe that marine ecosystems do have rights. And there's going to be a big launch of an ocean rights declaration soon. These are defenders of ocean rights, guardians of oceans from Earth Law Center, who have kind of stewarded this campaign, Michelle Bender and Rachel Bustamante. And then I want to highlight kinship. There's a group called Our Sacred Sea that has these three members, two of which are Lummi elders, who believe that humans, that the Lummi people are kin with orcas. They call themselves the people under the sea, and they believe orcas are their family members. And going back to Thomas Berry, Earth Jurisprudence, what if the philosophy of our legal system understood and respected indigenous understandings that humans and nature can be kin together? And how would that change how our laws are applied? They've taken this understanding and are working to bring back an orca who was captive for 50 years to her home in the Pacific Northwest, protecting her interests as their family members. And I think this is an interesting case study because it's actually a really complicated issue to transport an orca. She's in Florida right now, all the way to the Pacific Northwest. And obviously there's some considerations about, is there any risk? Is this the right thing for the orca? And I think it's really important in this case to listen to indigenous voices who consider this orca to be their family member, just as other family members make complicated decisions for those that they love. And but does our legal system respect that perspective now? Maybe, maybe not, but that's something we can evolve. And then if you're like, well, guardians of nature, but are they really in a legal sense? There's actually places like in Colombia where ecosystems have appointed legal guardians to speak as their formal voice. This is one example of that with the Atrato River in Colombia. And then there's, people who are representing nature in within a company, speaking on behalf of nature within here, a natural products company in the United Kingdom. Now, people might say, wait a minute, companies, corporate law, isn't corporate law the enemy? And in some cases, historically, yeah, that's been the enemy. There's been a lot of horrible things that have come from corporations and corporate law. But if you look at some corporate laws, a lot of what corporations have to do is to maximize the value of the company. Historically, we've interpreted that as monetary value for shareholders, but the IPB released a report that says there's 50 types of value. Monetary value is one of those. What about the rights of nature? That's a value. What about understanding that humans are part of nature? That's another value as well. So can we reinterpret how companies work? And these two individuals are both speaking for nature on a company board and trying to recreate the very purpose of corporations from something that takes to something that is part of this larger system of life that gives back to nature. Along the way, we're going to train a lot of guardians, people to think for a mountain, a desert, an ocean, or a forest. I think this is going to be a future area of study. And two last people to highlight. One is Jojo Mehta. She speaks for nature in that she seeks accountability in the highest court. She's working to criminalize ecocide within the International Criminal Court and has made incredible progress the last 2 years. Be sure to follow that. I think we all need to be accountable at the highest level, no matter if you're a head of state or anyone else. And then Kevin Schneider, who speaks in the courts for non-human animals. Here, Happy the elephant, who was captive in the Bronx Zoo. And Kevin's work persuaded at least one judge in the highest state of New York to say that, Happy the elephant is not a thing. Happy is a person, and our legal system should reflect that. So I just went through a bunch of examples where people are out there speaking for nature, defending the rights of nature, representing nature legally in the courts, in a company, in a governance body. And all of this is for two purposes, one of which is to give a voice to the natural world, and the other of which is to challenge our legal institutions to reframe the very laws that underpin our entire system of law and society, to give the planet's interests center stage. And maybe in 10 or 20 years, we can say the purpose of our legal system is to protect all life on the planet, to protect nature, and humans are part of nature. So this is about us as well. And I'm really excited about the progress and hope everyone continues to monitor these successes. So thank you for having me.